He is a lawyer representing Officer Blaine Salamone in the Alton Sterling case. His name is John McLindon, and he's live with us right now. Mr. McLindon, thank you for being on the program. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
I want to verify, because we've been getting a lot of shaded information. We were told that the DOJ met with Officers Salamoni and Lake privately before they did the press conference on Wednesday, I guess it was. Is that accurate?
No, that's not true.
Interesting.
They met with the Sterling family, but they didn't meet with the officers. No.
All right. Well, we were told this by someone outside DOJ, and I wanted to verify that. So how did they find out that there was no finding that they had violated the civil rights of Alton Sterling?
Well, we all got that press, leak from the Washington Post. That's how I first found out. But, we thought that was pretty reliable, but we didn't find out until the next day when we watched it on TV and saw Corey Amundsen give his briefing.
Now, you represent only Blaine Salamone. Howie Lake has his own attorney?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Well, we'll try not to lump them in here unless there is some point where we ask you something and it applies to both to the best of your knowledge. What is their status regarding their employment right now?
They're on administrative leave.
Are they being paid?
Yes.
Okay.
There is another item that came up in the DOJ report that I think has been somewhat distorted. I'm not sure. That's why I'm about to ask you this question. A lot of people were upset when and they're talking about that your client put his gun to Mr. Sterling's head and said, "I'm going to kill you." I read in the report, pointed his gun. There is a difference between pointing the gun and putting it to someone's head. From your client's point of view, what actually happened?
Well, a couple of things. So I wasn't a party to that conversation between the Sterling family and DOJ, and I'm guessing I don't know that I've seen all the video that the federal government has, so I'm just kind of going off what I've heard in the press on that. So even if that is true, remember that the feds had two experts in use of force, two nationally known experts in use of force. And so if that stuff is true, they obviously felt it didn't rise to the level of any criminal conduct. Mr. Amundsen made a remark that some of the officers' tactics and behaviors, they didn't think they were perfect, but it never rose to the level of criminal conduct. So I'm kind of at a disadvantage here, but that's kind of my take on it.
Understood.
Now, the Attorney General has said that he is going to conduct the state investigation. Does this mean that your client and Mr. Long are going to be interviewed by his investigators and that the process starts over? And in other words, how much of the DOJ's evidence and investigation can or should be used?
That's a good question. I'm assuming that the United States Attorney's Office will give their investigation material to the state attorney general. I think that's how it works. But in addition to that, the state will do their own investigation. I mean, they might re-interview some of the witnesses. I'm sure they'll look at all the videos. I know in the feds they did enhancements of the videos. I mean, they were extremely thorough, and I'll bet the state AG will be as thorough. I guess they share information with each other. I assume they would.
It's 8:45, temperature 61 in the capital city. AM Baton Rouge returns. I'm Gallagher. He's Profita. Cade Boisette at Master Control. And our guest is John McLindon, attorney representing Officer Blaine Salamone in the Sterling shooting case. And, John, I wanted to ask you this question, and it's about Blaine and his state of mind. How is he? I mean, he took someone's life. How does he feel about that? Is he okay?
Well, it's been a long 10 months, and look, he feels bad that somebody died here, but he's always maintained that he did what he had to do. He's not glad he had to do it, but Alton Sterling had a loaded gun in his hand. His hand was on the gun coming out of the pocket, and again, Blaine's not glad that he had to do it, but he did what he was trained to do, and quite honestly, what the law of the United States allowed him to do, any police officer to do. So it's been hard on him. It's been very hard. It's been hard on him and his entire family. So, but he's doing the best he can.
As we go through what is left of this process, will you be, unless something drastically changes, the attorney who represents him during the state investigation, and if there are any lawsuits filed, the attorney who represents him, and if the police department decides to proffer some discipline, are you all the way on all of these things, or will different people step in?
It'll be different. I'll continue to represent him on the state investigation. If there's a civil lawsuit filed, which clearly there will be, the parish attorney's office will provide a defense to that. And then on his, internal affairs investigation or the employment issue, he'll be represented by different lawyers on that. Union lawyers will probably represent him on that.
John, one more thing I'm going to ask this is just an opinion question, but it came to light yesterday that an individual had created a fake account on social media and threatened the two officers involved, Salamoni and Officer Lake, and or their families. Any comment there?
Actually, that was just one of them. I saw that one. Within 20 minutes of the press conference, there was a really ugly one that was sent out on Twitter. I got a copy of it, and I forwarded it both to the United States Attorney's Office and to the local district attorney and said, we're worried about this. So that's two now. They're worried. They're very worried about the crazy people out there. So, they arrested one this morning. Hopefully they can get the other guy, too.
Oh, I read your bio, and this is not the first time that you have been involved in a police use of force case. You're something of an expert on that. Do you think that there will be any differences in the examinations of the state attorney general? In other words, are there other things in state law that perhaps are not similar to what the feds examined?
Well, you're right. It's a different, statute they would be looking at. But the core thing is the same, was it a reasonable use of force? Whether it's a federal investigation or state investigation, the core question is, was it a reasonable use of force? Yes. The federal government has already found that. And again, two separate independent experts. We have our own expert. Of course, he said the same thing. And I think the state attorney general's office, when they get into it, they're going to say, was this a reasonable use of force? And the answer is going to be yes.
And is the standard the same? Corey Amundson said beyond a reasonable doubt. Is the standard the same in the investigation before they can go to a grand jury with it in the state?
Well, they can go to the grand jury whenever they want, but the burden of proof is yes, beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, the federal statute's a little weird. It's the civil rights statute. Think about the Rodney King beating, okay? Mm-hmm. There were police officers, so they're acting under a color of law. And if you watch that beating, they willfully violated this man's
they went at it way too long.
So those guys were convicted under that, and they should have been. This like comparing apples and oranges. Were these officers acting under color of law? Absolutely. But did they willfully violate this man's rights? No, absolutely not. It was a reasonable use of force under the circumstances. Unlike Rodney King, that was terrible. This was a convicted felon with a loaded gun in his pocket, grabbing it, and they had to do what they had to do.
John McLindon represents Noel Salamoni. We will be talking again. Thank you for your time this morning, sir. Appreciate you.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.